Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heroes Wear Scrubs, Clinical Research Nurses. My name is Danielle Coe. I am the founder and CEO of Black Women in Clinical Research. Black Women in Clinical Research mission is to educate, empower, support, and help Black women thrive in the clinical research industry. Tonight, we have some amazing guests who have a deep knowledge of what it means to be a clinical research nurse in the clinical research industry. We also have my co-host, Andrika Thomas, Rashida Hall. And so we're just going to go ahead and get started. And so first, I would like for our speakers to introduce themselves. Dr. Lovey.
Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me? You can hear me pretty good, Danielle?
Yes.
Okay, good. Hello, I'm Dr. Lovey Negrin, and I'm a research nurse practitioner. So I currently work in institution research, which essentially means I work for a research university. So we'll soon talk about the different entities that you can work in as a research nurse. And so I've had pleasure of being able to work in a pretty big facility and gain really great experience. So that's what I currently do. I've been in research now for about, I think it'll be 8 years this year that I've been in clinical trials. So I do have a heavy background in research. And so I look forward and thank you all for having me so much.
Thank you, Dr. Lovey. Fallon, can I get you to introduce yourself, please?
Yes. So hello, everyone, and hopefully everyone can hear me okay. My name is Fallon Flowers, and I'm a board-certified women's health nurse practitioner, and I'm working as a clinical research nurse at a large FQHC, which is a federally qualified health center, 35 health centers there. And I've actually been in research since May of 2020. So a lot more recent and not as long as Dr. Lovey has, but that is what I do is I work in clinical research in community health setting.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to start with the first questions. How did you get started in the clinical research industry? Dr. Lovey?
First. Okay, yes. So so my background is in science. So I was a biology major before even becoming a nurse. So I was doing big science, botany research. I was doing surgery on hamsters, and so I just think that I just needed a change. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, and so I started teaching. I graduated with my biology degree, and I started teaching high school chemistry. And I was like, I gotta figure out something else to do. And so one of my sorority sisters was going back to get her, she was like psychology major. She was going back to get like her BSN. So long story short, that's how I ended up in nursing. I was like, hey, I'll become a nurse. And but I always had a love for the sciences. And so I went back and got my accelerated BSN. It was about a 16-month program, and started working at Grady Hospital as an ICU nurse. Loved it there. Oh my gosh, loved it there. And came in contact with a principal investigator who's also the chair of emergency medicine at Emory. And he was like, I heard you talking about research one day, and I need a research nurse. So I was like, okay, sounds good to me. And sure enough, I started working over in emergency medicine at Emory. So I started off as a PRN coordinator, just working on the weekend. And then I decided to go back to school and get my master's and become a nurse practitioner, and did not know, the amount of avenues you could take as a nurse practitioner, and that I could still stay in science. And so with that being said, I have since started to do like some co-PI work, and we'll talk about that soon. And so now I'm a clinical research nurse practitioner supervisor at Emory School of Medicine. So after 8 years, kind of climbed the ladder, I guess, in research. So it's definitely a different route with nursing. So I'm really excited to, let you all know about that.
Thank you. Fallon, can I get you to talk about your clinical research journey?
Yes. So for myself, like Dr. Lovey, I actually, in my undergrad was also a biology major as well. And that was quite some years ago now. I hate to say 20 years ago, but it was about that long ago. But I first came in contact with research as a biology student, actually. And what I could really appreciate was all of the posters that I would see in the halls of our biology department building. And so I always stopped and read them. I participated early on in a couple of research symposiums when I was an undergrad. And what was so interesting was I still remember being one of very, very few African-American students that was going into the building that housed the sciences, into Wagner Hall. And when we did have the research symposium, we spotted across the entire room all of us that were actually involved. But during that same time frame, when I was in undergrad, I went to an internship that actually had a nurse practitioner there. I had heard of nurses before, but I had never heard of nurse practitioners. And when I started to have conversations with her, and I come to find out some of the many things that they can do, and I knew that I wanted to do OB-GYN related healthcare, I found that that was something that I wanted to do, that I wanted to become a women's health nurse practitioner. And so I wound up getting my associates in nursing after my bachelor's in biology. Then I went on and got my master's in nursing. And it was actually a dual program where I did a RN to MSN, which is a associate's to master's degree, with the women's health nurse practitioner at the same time. And my first WHMP job at was actually at my current institution where I was working there. And I came into contact with the chief medical officer and the CEO. Both introduced me to the chair of the research department on a couple of different occasions. And because I had actually expressed an interest in the research that we had going on. And so I started volunteering and working with them specifically on a project that involves African-American women and pregnancy. And there came a time where change had to occur, unfortunately, that I had to leave the health center. And so I knew that the department needed a research nurse. And so I went ahead and just applied and transferred in and went straight from one job to the other. And so that's really how I kind of got started. And so I'm grateful for the ability to kind of have that continuity in being on one side of things, being the provider, and then on the other side of things, now working fully in research to kind of give those further insights, especially because they had not had any nurse practitioners or anybody from the health centers on the research side, for a full amount of time. So that was really, that's really a great benefit of what I'm doing now, because I can take the provider insights, my clinical informatics background that I attained during that time, and bring it all into the research department.
Thank you. So they say that a hero is someone who has given his or her life to something bigger than oneself. And that's by Joseph Campbell. So with that being said, what motivates you, Dr. Lovey?
I would say just being able to connect our community to research. When you're training to work in research, you go through your GCP training, right? And so one of the things they talk about is the Tuskegee trials. They have to bring that up because in a lot of communities, especially the African-American community, it's the first thing we hear our patients say. It's like, you're not enrolling me, you're not about to give me syphilis, And so just to be able to educate them on a level that they can understand, that we have come so far from Tuskegee trials, and so many more faces like me at the bedside, and really just advocating for why we have to be represented. So my motivation is just seeing our numbers increase. I am the only person that looks like me for a very, very long time that was on my team. And so I'm sure you all are familiar with Grady Hospital and the patient population that we serve. They look like us. And so it took me essentially being the face of our department to increase our numbers. They always call me magic. Oh my God, we don't know what it is about Lovey. It's how I look, because I look like them, and they can trust me. And I tell them all the time, I turn down studies I don't trust. Okay. And so I've plenty of studies I just don't believe in, and I have chosen not to be the coordinator on them. And so when I go before a patient and let them know that I would present this to my mother, I would present this to my father, to my sister, to my loved ones. And so that's what motivates me, is just really making sure that we are included. We're talking about inclusion across the globe right now. So we need to also be included in clinical trials. So that's my motivation every day.
I think that's very important. People feel more connected to people that they can relate to, and seeing you there, I'm sure is very comforting for a lot of the patients and a lot of people that are participating in the clinical trial. Fallon, can I get you to answer the question about what motivates you?
Yes. So for me, I have a huge compassion for community health, and kind of the underdog and just the everyday bits of life, because we can, people can come into their healthcare visits and be seen just for a moment of time, but a lot of what affects people's health is the social determinants of health. And a lot of what my research department works on, and what our organization as a whole really looks at deeply, is the social determinants of health, or SDOH. And so those disparities are very great, we know, and in Black and brown communities, minority communities. And so for me, just being able to take the extra time to be able to explain things to patients, especially that look like me, that come from the neighborhoods that I came from, to be able to give back to them, and to be able to help them to understand. But to Dr. Lovey's same sentiments, it's a wonderful thing when I'm able to express something to someone that looks like me, and they can hear it from me, and I can take all the education that I've had to be able to help to bring this down to them. And I don't really want to say down, but to a level that they can understand. And that's really, I think the thing that motivates me most is just being able to help people from my neighborhoods, and being able to get them more involved in research, and allow them to be more assured that that this is safe, that this is okay. And just the same as Dr. Lovey's sentiments, if this is something that I feel safe enough and okay enough to share with my family, then I can share it with you.
Definitely. And like you guys have said, anytime for me, when I bring up the Tuskegee syphilis study, my family immediately, when I bring up clinical trials, my family immediately brings up the Tuskegee syphilis study. And I think that this is a conversation that we need to have with our family members, so that we need to educate them, because with COVID-19 and everything, people are more aware of clinical trials now. So I feel like you guys are, you're on the front line. You're the person that the patients are seeing, during this time. So I think that your job that you're doing is amazing. And
this is a time that we really need to, if you're interested in clinical trials, and I don't care if you're Black, brown, or green, but definitely for our Black and brown people, like, this is really a time for you to get clinical research, and you have to have a passion for this. I'm on the hiring side now, right? And so I have a team that is like, that I supervise, at such high turnover, because we hear about the money in research, and we hear about it's on the job training in some instances. But then when you get in there, you really have to have a compassion for them. You have to have a passion for this. And so I see so many nurses that have come in over my 8 years, and it's like, oh, I see that you look so happy when you're over here. Are y'all hiring? And I'm like, yeah, we're hiring. Come on. I'm so inclusive. And then they come on and they're like, oh, because at the end of the day, this is a calling. I honestly believe it's a calling. And you find out in the first 6 months, first of all, if you go through all that training you have to go through, you got to still have that love.
Yes.
Isn't it a lot of training, Fallon?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a lot of training. So this is definitely the time to get in if you really have a passion for research, because we have to figure out this virus. And I think that we're going to find a solution in our people. I really do.
And so you kind of already really touched on it, but what is your advice for someone who's interested in being a clinical research nurse?
Fallon, would you like to go first on that? I can.
I would say, from my experience, take that leap, do some research first, but take a leap of faith. Keep a keen eye and ear with discernment, because we really, really, really need people that can speak up when it's time. So I would say that you need to be an advocate. So if you are participating in research and you're working on protocols and the MOP and all these different things, and surveys and questionnaires for people, if something doesn't sound right, you can't just roll with it because that's your job. You have to be able to say, no, we can't ask that. We can't ask it this way. And I think those things are really important. But the certification I don't have. I do have a lot of years of experience between being a student, a nurse, and a nurse practitioner, about 11 years of practice total. And then of course I had the relationship. So in my situation, it was really more who I knew and who I showed of myself. So other people and other situations, it may be different, but I still would at least try. And the biggest thing I can say is you never know until you try. Apply for that job and see, but make sure your resume is lined up right. And just think about like, what areas in research would you want to make an impact in? What patient population, what disease process, what thing do you want to make an impact on the world with the most, and see if that institution is actually doing that. Because you don't want to just get any clinical research nurse job. You want to be able to work at an institution that you feel like you can trust, that they're making an impact, and that they're working on some of the important things that are important to you. So I'll say that.
Exactly. And just to piggyback off the same thing she said, so this is just my honest opinion. I feel like being a nurse makes it a lot easier for you to get into research than someone that, for one, is new to research, and even someone that may hold like maybe a CCRC credential or a CCRP credential. I have seen this firsthand. Just because nurses, I mean, obviously we have a skill that clinical sites need, regardless if it's a private site, so like your mom and pop type shop, all the way up to institutions. What helped me was the fact that the physician saw me. He saw I was interested in research, and I already worked at Grady. So the first thing he's thinking, she's already credentialed. She can already see the patient. So PIs look at what's the advantage to them. PIs don't like to do a lot of work. If you're in clinical research, you may have one that's highly motivated, but if he is very busy on his clinical side and has his own practice, he needs good CRCs, coordinators. So, and then a nurse, oh, they'll hire a nurse over a coordinator any day. You know what I'm saying? So if you're a nurse watching and you're interested, like, this is your time, And so to piggyback also as far as how you apply for these jobs, okay, y'all, I'm a go-getter. So when he told me that they were hiring, I still had to apply. Okay. So I went and applied. What happened was when I applied, I put that, I sent an email and I CC'd him in there, but I still had to go through his business management department, whatever. And they were not really responding. Well, what I did, I went back onto the site. I said, well, what department is this? It said Emory School of Medicine, Emergency Neurosciences. What's the address? Oh, that's across the street from where I work at currently. I marched my happy self right over there as professional as I know how. I asked to speak to the person that was actually listed on the business manager. And she laughed so hard at me, and she was like, no, we got your resume. We heard about you. We just don't have the grant funding. And so that's something else you have to realize, is that sometimes it's not that it's not for you, the funding may not be there. Mm-hmm. I think most jobs, and if I'm wrong, please somebody correct me, but I know for sure in institution, jobs are grant funded. So if they lose one of the research trials, and when they said they had the job available and now it's 6 weeks in and now the money's gone, they may not hire you right then. Mm-hmm. So don't give up. Just keep emailing, stay in their inbox, and walk in the office and see them. That may be a little bit hard with COVID now, but that's what I did. So.
Definitely. So kind of piggyback off of what Fallon said with, getting your resume right. This is my little plug. Go to www.bwicr.com and schedule your resume review. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Rashida.
I love that, girl. Plug yourself, okay? But it is a good service, and a lot of people have rave reviews about having their resume reviewed. But thank you, ladies, so much for being a part of this talk tonight. I think it's extremely important to hear different perspectives and roles in clinical research. Dr. Lovey, you talked about being on the site side, and I have experience on the site side as a coordinator about grant funding, and that is one of the reasons why I left the site side, because funding was not readily available, and I would see other people in my department get cut, or like they would have to move to another department. So from my perspective as a monitor, I typically see coordinators have that nurse background, and I also see some site managers with a nursing degree. What other avenues can nurses take within clinical research? Like, do you think it's strictly best for the site side, or do you think it's easy for them to transition into like a pharmaceutical company or CRO?
That's a good question. So I don't know if you all were listening to the talk that Dan Sheffra had last night, the clinical trials guru. I started to kind of tap into his stuff. And so from I would say entry level wise as a RN, if you see CRC1 positions, especially in institutions, the bigger institutions, those, even if they don't have a clinical research nurse posted, they may have just not thought about it, right? So what I would do is I would apply for those. And when you go into your application and you're uploading like your CV and stuff, also upload your RN license and make sure you highlight that. And I think on Emory, they also allow you like a little, an insert, a comment where you can type in some information additional about yourself. Also in your cover letter, talk about that. So entry level on the institution side, definitely go out and apply for those CRC positions. What I do know also about CRC is you don't have to have the certification. So if you're not a nurse, Emory will allow you to come in maybe with, maybe a bachelor's in a science related field, and maybe 2 years of some type of patient care. Maybe you were a CNA, that's kind of like the credentialing side. But I say just get to the interview, that's a good entry level on institution. According to Dan last night, he was saying that CRAs, if he was choosing a CRA, right? Whoever was listening in last night when he was talking, that if you're looking for a CRA position, they actually like nurses better. Like he was saying, if he has a nurse and a person that doesn't have a nursing degree as a CRA and they're essentially the same, he would choose the nurse just because we're very anal about documentation. You can't get stuff over us. You know what I'm saying? Like, because we, it's, I don't know if you ever had a monitor visit for those that are there, but if you have a CRA that's kind of green behind the ears, it's easy to, know you made a mistake, but then not really show you made the mistake. Not lying, but sometimes it's kind of like not worth the whole protocol deviation. So with RNs, I get an RN CRA, so my site, I'm having to, dot every I and cross every T. So CRAs for the bigger CROs, and then clinical research coordinator 1 positions for the institutions. I hope that helped.
It does. And I can definitely attest to the clinical research associate side. So I'm a senior CRA, and I have seen different companies actually have bridge programs specific for nurses. You don't have to have a clinical research background because they'll train you on that part. But if you are a nurse, what I've seen that's hot right now are nurses in oncology. That's really big because you can get trained to be a monitor. And if you have that oncology experience, that is golden. Okay. So thank you for talking about that. And what about you, Fallon? What other roles do you foresee nurses being able to have in our industry?
It depends. Well, I would definitely say it depends on the level of education and experience that may make a difference, depending on everything. But really, still to Dr. Lovey's point, when people see that you have that nursing background, because you got to think about all of the evidence-based journals and research and papers that we have to write and to know, just with nursing education, I'll say. But I could definitely see as a clinical research nurse on the clinical side, but I can also see in more supervisory roles, and actually Dr. Lovey is actually doing that with actually doing the hiring. But principal investigator is definitely not out of the picture. My hope is that one day we don't have the same restrictions about who can be listed first and some of these other things when we look at maybe like a nurse practitioner versus an MD when it comes to things with clinical trials, because we're trusted on the provider side when it comes to writing prescriptions and seeing patients and writing orders, but then on the research side we still have some barriers to overcome. And so I would believe now with the U.S. seeing how integral that nurses are and how well we are trusted, and how even now nurse practitioners are such a valuable asset to our healthcare community. hopefully they'll take that knowledge and trust as we are starting to allow more full practice authorities in other states and say, you know what? We need to trust these nurse practitioners. We need to trust these nurses. We need to open up these borders and lines. And with that, I think as the entire community, the United States health community changes their mindset on us and they get to really know us and know our value, then I think that we can go even further when it comes to research. But I don't think really there's no area that we should be restricted from, because we are that knowledgeable, we are intelligent, we are talented, and we got it. And so I really hope that we can really go far as the years go on now, especially with the public eye on us.
I agree. Research nurses are always so amazing on my studies. I love when I see that there's a coordinator that's a research nurse or a site manager who's a nurse background, because they actually are more knowledgeable than I am. And I'm not afraid to tell someone, you know, you can explain this a lot better than I can, and maybe you can help me out with this. But I think that nurses have, like you said, have a place anywhere in clinical research. And I want people to understand that you're not restricted to just one role. So my next question is, so we all know the importance of having a mentor and having people who surround you that support your journey. What is the best advice that you have received, Fallon, in your journey?
Ooh. Well, so for myself, I've had the honor of, for a very long time, being a member of the National Black Nurses Association. And in my local chapter, still right about now, I'm practically still the baby when it comes to membership. And so for me, it was always, keep going, baby. That was always, you know, that was the thing that I heard the most was, keep going, baby, keep going. So many of them were and are doctorally prepared, PhD prepared, have been instructors, have just done so much, you know, with their lives, and they have really impressed upon me. But the other thing that I think I'll say the most that has been impressed upon me from all of them has been to have a seat at the table. That's been very, very important. Get involved and have a seat at the table. So if it's in healthcare policy, if it's you know, on a board of directors, or, you know, in some type of leadership role, I think that was really kind of the main thing. But it was at the same time, that same sentiment behind it all was, keep going, baby.
And then Dr. Lovey, what about you? What's the best advice that you've received on your journey?
So, you know, I think in clinical research, it's kind of changed over time. And so to make this short, you know, first it was finding, like she said, being a part of organizations that support your cause. And then clinical research nurses is really small. I was so happy when I found this Black Women in Clinical Research group. I was so excited. Thank you to my friend Antoinette, she's watching. But so anyways, my journey is a little bit different because I went into a white heavy world. I don't know how else to put it. You know, just being the only person that looks like me, and I just feel like every time, because of my career path, I end up in those rooms. I end up in those rooms where it's me, and it's kind of like, oh, she's a Black girl. What does she do? Is she like the assistant to the doctor? And I'm like, no, I'm running the team. You know, but and so I was my biggest motivation, because I didn't have anybody else that really did what I did. I have a lot of friends that are NPs, a lot of friends that are RNs. And I said, but God put me in this for a reason. I love science and I love caring for people. So I just ended up motivating myself from the front end, right? So then I went on and advanced my degree. And the next advice I got from mentors, I picked up my most mentors when I was getting my double master's. And gosh, those mentors are so great. Almost brings tears to my eyes. But the number one thing I can remember they said was, one told me was, do not shrink, stop shrinking. Because I had started to shrink in my position. I love what I did, and I think I had to get to a part in my, I got to a sector in my degree where in my career where I was like, you know what? I'm going to give them 100% effort where I am. I wrote out positions. I wanted to become assistant director of my department. because I saw the need. It wasn't about title. It was about, this is what we need because I need to replicate myself. They just want to put me out there and just keep me at the bedside and keep me enrolling. I mean, not to brag, but facts are facts. I led our department to national trials, #1 spot for over 20 trials, me single-handedly, because I'm the Black girl that had to come to work and do 100%. And so, anyways, I think one of the other questions will be about future stuff, so we'll talk about that later. But anyways, so that is the best advice I got was stop shrinking. And so now I'm at that place where you're not going to shrink me. I got some things that I'm about to pull out my sleeve. I think my job can even feel it, but yes, I'm so grateful for them. I went through a lot of milestones working there, and it has just given me leverage to be able to be a great wife and be a great mother. And that's another thing about clinical research. You get with the right company, you can kind of work on your own time, especially as RNs. We kind of get the pool. We have a pool on kind of like scheduling and stuff, depending on where you work. So, but yeah, I would say that's what was my but the best advice I received was to stop shrinking.
That's great advice. And you're right. It can definitely happen to where you feel like maybe I'm doing too much and maybe I don't need to have the spotlight, but it's something in you that says, no, I deserve this, right? I have a say so. What I'm doing is relevant. It's important. My voice matters. And so you have to step into that role, but it can be a little intimidating, especially if you're the only person who looks like you, which is why I'm so grateful for this group. I'm so thankful for Danielle for creating this amazing space so that we can see representation in so many different areas in clinical research. So thank you. The next question I had was about the most difficult part of your job. So for me, sometimes that means my work-life balance is a little off. Sometimes that means that, you have to take a role maybe that you don't necessarily want to take. So what for you, Dr. Lovey, is the most difficult part or the most challenging part of your job?
I started holding myself to a higher standard. I started there when I had a bachelor's in biology and I had a bachelor's in nursing. And I have since then gone back and got a double master's in my doctoral. I'm the highest degree in my department. Under the physicians, I'm higher degree than my director. And so the most challenging part was staying in my place, because I realized that they were going to allow me to pour as much into the department, and not get paid for it or not get any recognition, or they take the recognition for it. And I'm not about recognition. It's just that after 8 years, honey, come on. And I think one of the worst situations that happened to me, I thank God it happened, but it hurt. I led our department to this stroke trial. We were #1 in the country. We had like 50 or 60 sites. I mean, come on, we're Emory, so we're competing against like Mayo Clinic and Vanderbilt. And so single-handedly, again, drove us to #1 spot. I was on maternity leave. And so, they decided to take the congratulations trip by themselves and not include me. They brought me back all the trophies. They're all sitting on my desk. And so, for me, that was, I'm sorry, what was the question again? I kind of started going off in a rant.
It's fine. I was asking what the most challenging part of your job is.
The most challenging part is staying in my place, because you can't say anything. You can't come in wearing that weight on your shoulders, So that's the most challenging part. It's just knowing that I'm at a place that where they have me is where they want me. And that's okay because I'm performing very well. I'm in a very small department, guys, too. I mean, it's like 5 or 6 of us. And so, that's the most challenging part is just knowing that I probably won't leverage any higher. So now I have to decide to, do what I want to do again to stop shrinking. So
come on over to the CRO side, girl. We need you. Come on over. Fallon, what about you? What is the most challenging part of your job right now? Or what has been the most challenging?
At first I had thought to myself, I would say that, I would have said not doing enough women's health research and not seeing enough women patients in my research. But the more I kept hearing Dr. Lovey talking, I was like, that's actually partly my problem too, the most challenging part for me is staying in my place because the amount of EMR experience and knowledge that I have, clinical informatics knowledge that I have, provider knowledge that I have, and just having been with the patients on a day-to-day, and then you have the research mindset that says, oh, well, this would be optimal, or this is what we should do. But I know what it's like to be on the ground in those health centers, to see how the workflows go from beginning to end, when the patient comes in the door till they leave, the time that the provider has with the patient, and so for me, that's the hardest part, it's like I'm constantly having to bring that back up and kind of quote unquote flex my muscles, like, no, that we can't do that in the EMR, or actually you can do that in the EMR, or, that sounds great, but the providers only have 10 minutes. And so, I constantly have to find myself speaking up for that. But the other portion of it is about staying in my place is as being a Black woman. And that's been another one because, with that whole thing, there's been this, sometimes there's been, oh, well, we can ask this of the patient or say this to the patient. And then I have to come back in and say, I'm a Black person, and that's not that's not a way that we need to ask that question, or say that certain thing. But then also sometimes as a woman and just having to speak up, and it's just hard being, the only Black woman nurse in my department, and having to bring all of these different facets and features of who I am into this one place, into a role that when you look at the hierarchy of the research department, and just the way research is laid out, the level at where I am with, does not equate to the knowledge and the background that I have. And so that's been hard because, speaking from that place, but then you have I'm the investigator, and I'm the principal investigator, or I'm the doctor. And it's just like, yeah, but I'm Black and you're not. I'm female and you're not. And I'm a nurse and you're not. And I've worked in those clinics that you think that something is ideal for, and you haven't stepped foot in there. And so for me, sometimes that's kind of the hardest part too. I think even more so than not seeing enough women in the research and doing enough women's health research is staying in my place too.
And that is why we need you guys where you are. And I appreciate you for being the resounding board, because sometimes that happens where, they have to rely on us to be, or we have to step up and say, that's not going to work for our population, or I know firsthand that is not going to happen. So I appreciate that. I will turn it over to Andrika.
Hey, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. You're doing great. Let me just tell you that. You almost made me want to be a nurse for a second. Okay. Piggybacking off of what's being the most difficult at work, a lot of times people always say, hey, don't bring your home life into the job. But how do you not bring the job life or bring your work into your home? How do you separate those two? Fallon, you could go.
Well, for me, that's easy. Just turn off the computer. Just, just turn it off, walk away, put it to sleep. Okay. I got too much stuff to do, to be honest. I mean, I can say that now working in clinical research, when I was on the provider side of things in the health center, that was harder. I'm not gonna lie. And sometimes I literally did have to bring my work home with me, having all the progress notes and stuff that I had to still write in orders and the things that I had to do. But now, since I'm working kind of in a hybrid situation where some days I'm out at the health center and at the office, and then a lot more days I'm really more at home, what I had to do for myself was to separate my areas. And so I have a second bedroom that I had that's designated as a home office, big old L-shaped desk. And I got my double monitors in there and my extra keyboards and mouses and stuff going on. And then I have this separate area here that's my inside portion that I turn into my creative space and just my me space, where I can do some adult coloring, put my feet up, listen to music, do what I got to do. I can't let those people kill me. I can't do it. I got to live. And, you know, I have huge compassion for patients and for people and everything, but you also have to have a sense of self-preservation, and it's either them or it's going to be you. Which one's it going to be?
Absolutely. Yep. They'll replace you as soon as you croak. You see? Exactly. What about you, Dr. Levy? How do you like not bring your work home?
I agree. They sure will. They'll replace you. So you always replace. They love to say, "Oh, you know, oh my gosh, don't go." but yeah. So for me, you know, I get home. I got a 2-year-old. I run a business with my husband. After 5, I got to, you know, do stuff for him. I also am a professor in a nursing school. Y'all know I love science, so I teach pathophysiology for online nursing school right now. And that's my way of giving back. It's not even about money. I think another thing you have to realize too, when you're out here seeking a career, you got to find your why, you know, find your why. I say, you know, for some of us, we can do our passion and make money and then have our give back. But for some of us, like where I am right now, I'm working in my calling right now. I have a passion, which I'm starting to work on. And then my calling, as far as like how I'm giving back is through teaching. I teach. And so I love that. So that's kind of like my way of disconnected from the hospital, because yes, I'm a research nurse, but I still have to be at the bedside. I don't know if I told you, but of course I work in emergency neurosciences. So all of my trials are acute care trials. So these are patients getting off of the ambulance and we're at the bedside. I mean, whether this is a traumatic brain injury or a stroke, hypertensive emergency. So the things I see, you know, I'm waiting sometimes to see if the patient's gonna get Roth, return of spontaneous circulation to their heart, to see if I can get the family to say, hey, okay, so his heart's back, and I know y'all are crying, but I need him to get in this trial because there's not enough Black people in this trial, and we're trying to, you know, get enough people in here. So having that, you know, having that passion to be able to do that, but yeah, so that is, again, I lost my question. You know, this is my first time doing this, so guys,
make sure you're gonna take the work home, Dr. Lovey. Don't
take
it
the work home. See, look at me bringing it home, because I'm like all back in the house. Like, you know, I'll be at the bedside and the people be dying. But yeah, so just coming home and being a mom and being a wife, and then also my aunt has Alzheimer's, so I care for her. I'm a full-time caregiver. So she get home and she running around like a 2-year-old, you know. So yeah, that's how I disconnect.
Right.
Wow, I'm wondering about your time management, but that's a whole nother.
Yeah. That's 6 to 12. That's 6 to 12. Ain't no joke either. That's the other thing. If you got something to do, you got business, you got stuff going on, you don't have time for all of that. You can debrief a little bit in the car, move on.
Right. Absolutely, I agree. So, what is the most rewarding part of your job? Go ahead, Fallon.
Okay. All right. I would say for me, mine is giving back to the patients that I sat alongside in some kind of way. So because for a long time I was a patient of my healthcare institution, and with it being community health and federally qualified health center, you know, they serve the public, you know, with 35 health centers throughout the Chicagoland area. And so you know, some of you all may be from that time period, and this may be, you know, a little bit older than some of you all, but, you know, there was the time where after you were 24 years old, you got kicked off your parents' health insurance, you know, and when you finished undergrad and you didn't have insurance with your university anymore, that was it. And so, you know, I fell upon this place, and I remember just being in the lobby, just swelling with people. You know, I mean, you had to pull your ticket even though you had an appointment full of people. And now I get to serve those same people. You know, I've been able to serve them not only as a provider, but now in clinical research. And so for me, all in all, it's the ability to be able to make such a larger impact in healthcare. You know, it's still always rewarding to with one by one to see, you know, a patient here and there at a time. But I think the larger impact at a time and being able to see the overall scope and picture has been the most rewarding for me.
Thank you, Fallon. It's a full circle moment for you, you should say.
It really is the circle of life.
Yes. How about you, Dr. Levy? What's the most rewarding part?
The most rewarding part for me is, repeat the question first. I think that'll help me stay on track. The most rewarding part for me would be because when I came in the department, I told you all I was the first, Negro woman. But since then, we started a research associate group. That allows people that have gotten their bachelor's that are looking to go into some type of medical trial or medical field or whatever. So the most rewarding part has been for me to help develop this group that hires on people that have no clinical research but want to again get into the field. So just being able to have the opportunity to hire people that look like me. Now, mind you, I don't. People always say, "Are you going to hire just a Black girl?" And it's like, no. However, I am looking at her, right? Because I don't feel like every time we come into an interview, especially at a place like Emory, that we actually are being looked at. Because think about it, and I see this firsthand, I'm speaking from facts. A lot of people that don't look like us kind of have a shoe in. Now, mind you, I get an email from people that work within Emory all the time. Hey, my daughter, so-and-so is graduating from Emory, and I heard that you're the supervisor and you're hiring. But not one Black person that has ever applied for that job has had that. So I make sure that they have an equal opportunity to get hired. And I don't say, well, she's Black, we gotta let her in. No, but I'm making sure I'm watching her closely. So it's still very competitive. The team that I supervise now is like half white, half Black, half, it's mix of people, but now I get to hire people that look like me. So that's been the most rewarding part.
As Rashida likes to say, thank you for selling the elevator back down. Okay, ladies, last question before we get to the participants' questions. What is your future goals? What's next for you all? Fallon, you can go.
Thank you. For me, my next endeavors is making sure that I'm participating. I'm actually writing research articles for myself, and then also presenting at national conferences are kind of the very next goals. And then within the next year, also, I want to be able to visit having more research nurses in the department, but also for myself then to be able to work as a clinical research nurse practitioner so that I can actually utilize it. So for myself, it's a little bit, it's different because of my specialty since it's women's health. So for me, I can't write an order for a male patient unless it's related to STIs, for instance, or sexual health or something like that. And so that's the only limit with my specialty with being in the department is that, I can't do anything when it comes to children, older adults, it really has to be really more women's health focused. And so I really want to make sure that when we do have women's health and OB-GYN related research in there that I'm involved and I'm, in the coordinator position, investigator position, and more positions of leadership as time goes on and I get to know research more.
Thank you. How about you, Dr. Levy?
Yeah, I just want to continue to have a platform for us, in my department that we can continue to be inclusive for people across, all communities and all beliefs. And so that's something I want to do on the institution side is just make sure that we are comfortable applying for these jobs and that we have a real opportunity to get in. And then on the personal side, I have Danielle. I got to shout out her, you all's career professional services. You all got to go log on, and the prices are amazing and they're so worth it. You pay a small amount to get like $30,000 literally of information. So Danielle, thank you so much for that. So I do have some future things coming out. I hope that you all support. I just need to work on them and really get them together before I put it out there. But it's in research, and it's gonna, be a sector that we need. And I'm looking forward to collaborating with Black women in clinical research and a few other Black companies that are starting in clinical research. So.
All good plans, ladies. Your future, you are already bright, but your future is brighter. Back to you, Danielle.
I'm going to say I'm talking on mute, so you guys didn't hear what I said. I said, let's dive into these questions here. We have a few minutes. Let's see. It was a lot. Okay. What is the career growth path for a research nurse?
I guess I can answer that pretty quickly. So like I say, again, looking at your CRA positions that are looking for monitors that have that, advantage of being a nurse, and then also the CRC position, coming in and being a coordinator and learning the ropes of nursing. And from there, I mean, it's limitless. Like she said, EMPs are now becoming co-PIs and PIs on some trials, all the way up to site ownership. So that's, it's limitless.
Okay, the next question. I'd be very interested in presenting about clinical research nurse pertaining certifications or any. Okay, that doesn't look like a question. Sorry. Let's see. What would be considered an entry-level position for a nurse? I think we already talked about that with the clinical research coordinator. Let's see.
I saw a question from someone. She said that she was an ICU nurse in Ohio. And she said that with clinical research working across the globe, how are licensures affected? Ohio is not a part of the impact states. And I don't know what any of that means. So
Oh, that make the compact states.
Compact states?
Compact
states. Compact.
Yeah.
Okay, compact state as far as licensure. Maybe y'all understand the question. Fallon, please jump in if you understand.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what exactly what she may mean too with that. I mean, because as an ICU nurse in your state, I'm sure, out of all of maybe the hospitals that are in your area, that somebody is doing research somewhere. So you may not necessarily have to worry about crossing state lines to be able to do that, because that compact state, thing is a problem where, you can't, easily practice without having to go through a whole bunch of extra stuff. I don't have any other licenses in any other state, so I haven't gone through that. So I guess I would say just, delve deeply into where, what's in your current area, because you'd be quite surprised at the many opportunities that are out there. And working in ICU, my goodness, you really, really, really got a lot of experience in a lot of critical, related health conditions and things that can really make a difference in research. So please apply, please, in clinical research, if you're in that department in ICU.
Okay, someone asked a question about, are there remote entry level positions? And I know Andrika made a post today from, I can't recall the lady's name, but she was saying that you didn't need any clinical research experience, but just as long as you're a nurse. And so if you are in the group, Tamika, you can definitely tag you in the post, or if not, we can reach out to you. I can save this chat. And let's see. Another question that we have is, what goes into the decision to do a traditional versus a paperless clinical trial? Who decides, and what does the coordinator's role look like? Measures to mitigate the pandemic.
Okay.
Shoot that one to you, Dr. Lovey.
Okay.
Traditional versus paper.
Yes, they're saying, what goes into the decision to do a traditional versus a paperless clinical trial?
Oh, yeah. So the virtual trials, yeah, they're becoming huge now. I mean, if, like I said, if someone else on the board has any input, but I know that we have become paperless, meaning that like our ISFs, so our investigator site folders have now become virtual on like Florence. I don't know if you all are familiar with that. So that's something different now, and it allows for monitors to monitor from a distance. And so I personally think it's a great thing because we can take on so many more trials, and it's a lot less paperwork. So I prefer less paper. Now, if you're on a private site, I'm very interested in wondering how you would afford a platform like Florence. And so it may not be an option for you to be paperless, but hopefully that's the question they was asking. But yeah, I think it's an advantage now that we can do a lot less paper on the clinical trials exit.
Okay.
And I hope that we can do more ourselves, really on the health center side, because we are still going into the health center, and having patients to fill out papers, CRF and surveys are just really painstaking because it's double documentation, and my challenge to them when we can get back to it is to just open up RedCap on a tablet, you know, or open it up on the patient phone, send them a survey, and let's get this thing going. You know, I'm all for the technology. We can get rid of the paper for sure.
Yeah, Fallon, they're using it now. We're actually going e-consent for a lot of our trials through RedCap. RedCap's just expensive. So if you use, Qualtrics now has a platform for that. So maybe letting your site know about that, because it's easier work for you, but they don't have to pay for it. So look into Qualtrics. They have an e-consent process now. So
Okay.
Okay, this is going to be our last question before we close. As a CRA, are these positions both contract and permanent positions?
Andrika or Rashida?
So
That's not
yeah,
my
so I'm
area.
a CRA, and I don't know if she means like if you're a
CRA
nurse and then you become
Yeah.
a CRA. Yeah, you can be a W-2 worker, or you can be a contract 1099 where you are given everything and you basically have your own business. It just depends on what you want to do for the most part. So like once you are in the industry and you have years of experience, you're way more marketable for the contract side, which is where you get a lot more money from. Because they, don't account for, or they account for lack of having healthcare and benefits, all that. So your hourly rate can get pretty high up there because of those things. So yes, you definitely have the opportunity to do both.
Okay, so some of the takeaways that I have, and I just want to thank everyone, speakers, Dr. Lovey, Fallon, Rashida, and Andrika, for our first Zoom meeting of the year. But some of the takeaways that I have is to let your voice be heard, and to be intentional and be bold and stop shrinking, and to motivate yourself and to be your own motivator and really hit the ground running. If you want to be a clinical research nurse, reach out to people in the clinical research industry. Reach out to Dr. Lovey, reach out to Fallon, reach out to myself, Andrika, Rashida. We can definitely connect you with someone that can give you the information and the tools so that you can reach your career goals. And so the last thing I'm going to say, like Fallon said, is keep going, baby. So thank you, everyone, and you have a great night.
thank you. You have a great night.
Thank you, ladies. Good
Have a good
night.
night.